Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us here at Twist Gaming. We are live on Twitch from Origins Game Fair 2017 in lovely Columbus, Ohio. I am your host, Anne. I'm joined here with my co-host,
Nicole,
as well as
Vinny Salzillo from Double Exposure.
Awesome. Vinny, tell us a little bit about Double Exposure.
Well, Double Exposure started out as a convention organization running Dexcon in 1992 in New Jersey. And we've been running.
I couldn't tell from one New Yorker to a New Jersey. I couldn't tell by the accent.
Well, I'm actually from New York, but New Jersey was cheaper. we tried pricing things in New York. We could run 4 conventions in New Jersey for the price we could have paid in New York, so that was a good way to do it. So we started Dexcon in 1992, had over 500 people for our first convention. It was ostensibly a role-playing convention with 2 LARPs, and back in those days we didn't call them LARPs, we called them live role-playing games. The rest of the culture of the convention grew very, very quickly. Board gaming, war gaming, CCGs eventually got added in 1993-94 when Magic came out, and so the convention's been growing ever since. We took a 7-year hiatus, but this year Dexcon is celebrating its 20th convention. And that'll be in actually 3 weeks from now, which is terrifying.
Wow, congratulations!
We have a sister convention to that, which is Dreamation. Dexcon gets about 2,000 people. Dreamation gets about 1,600, and that'll take place next February. And one of the interesting things about Dexcon, and kind of to give you a timeline of Double Exposure, is that we treated the indie community, which was still a fledgling community back in the 90s, as royalty. So we built up a lot of trust and a lot of egos and confidence for indie game developers to show their games, play their games, teach their games alongside big company names like TSR at the time, or any of the companies that you might think traditional role-playing games. So Double Exposure is very responsible for building up the entire indie community in the Northeast, to the point where our indie role-playing and story track for both Dexcon and Dreamation is the single largest in the country outside of Gen Con or Origins. We are literally running over 100 different story and role-playing games, that most of which people have never heard of, at each of our conventions, and that's certainly coming up in 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Just to give the actual pitch, July 5th through 9th in Morristown, New Jersey.
Are tickets still available?
Absolutely.
Where can you get them?
You can get them online at www.dexposure.com. That's dexposure.com. So to give you more of the history, do you mind me rambling like this?
No, by all means. I got it. I am so okay with this.
So because of our nurturing of the indie community and the growth of our conventions, we decided to run a designer conference called Metatopia. And we launched that in 2011. And the theory behind Metatopia was that people can come and play test their games, but in a way that was kind of different from other playtest conventions.
How
I don't
so?
want to name them, right? But, we have complete control of the convention. The theory was that when a designer was coming in, they would pay us a fee, as if they were the attendees of the show.
Okay.
And basically the players were the ones who were entertaining them. So we had total control over everybody's schedule. We had phone calls with every designer, and we programmed a schedule for them and guaranteed that we'd fill seats with people exactly the way they wanted. They gave us demographic information. If they wanted 4 females between the ages of 40 and 65, when they came to their event, there was a table filled with 4 females, exactly the way they asked for.
Wow.
And
that's quite a challenge to take on. I mean, coordination in and of itself for just trying to get vendors together, but now you're matching up vendors with attendees.
Absolutely right. And the only reason we could do it was because we were pulling from the vast Double Exposure community we had built up over 20 years. And so, when we said, hey, come and be a player, we got 300 or 400 players for that first year. And we were able to give them a questionnaire about their interests and match them up with every single designer. We had over 100 designers in our first year.
I can't imagine the amount of manpower and time that must go into organizing something like that.
Well, Avi and I do it basically by ourselves. We call every designer, we negotiate the entire schedule, we build the entire schedule, And the on-site staff is minimal. It takes 1/5 the staff to do a Metatopia that it does a Dexcon.
Wow.
And we have a seminar track which is currently 3 seminars deep at any given hour. We have over 120 seminars coming up in November.
What kinds of topics are covered in the seminars?
Everything from how to create your first game to how to play test it, how to market it, how to get it into distribution, how to kickstart it, how to maintain it, how to do your financials, how to do your legal work. It is literally a summer camp with everything crammed into it. A new designer could walk into Metatopia and get more information about how to be an actual publisher in one weekend than they can from 2 years prior.
That's fantastic.
And that's the theory of the convention. Right now, Metatopia is reaching over 700 people, with half of them being designers from all over the world. That's kind of the growth that we've had for this, and people have pretty much called it the Designer Conference. It takes place November 2nd through 5th, again in Morristown, New Jersey. Same website, www.dexposure.com.
Very cool. How much, what are ticket prices for Metatopia?
So to be a player and to come into Metatopia and just enjoy and play test, $20 for the entire convention.
Wow.
The designers pay $100 for their customized schedule. And not only do they get as many play tests as they want effectively from the players, we also do one high test per designer, meaning that we literally match up other designers who can give them top-level feedback for one of their slots.
Wow.
This seems to be a really great passion, a labor of love, if you will. It sounds like a lot of work and sounds like something you must really have to love to put the attention and detail into to get this done right. Talk to me a little bit about your love for the board game community. Like, where does this all stem from? Where did you come up with the idea to do these conventions?
Well, let's just broaden it. It's not just the board game community. It's basically all of gaming. I enjoy all of gaming, whether it's the electronic, the war games, even the simplistic card games. I mean, I love spades. It's my favorite my favorite game. But yeah, we do have a passion for it. We want to see things done right. We want to see that everybody who has a dream about what they may or may not be able to do with their ideas actually be able to implement them. When people are struggling or don't have very good ideas, we want to gently redirect them so that they don't get disappointed. We have a big stake in that particular way of doing things, and we've chosen the gaming industry to kind of roost. When I was very young and still thinking about Dexcon, my mother told me there's no money to be made in this gaming thing. And she was right for a very long time. But Avi and I have made a living out of this. And to continue the saga, once Metatopia was established, the good folks at Gen Con said, we've been wanting to do a playtest track for some time. And Derek Guder called me and said, would you be interested in doing a playtest hall at Gen Con? I said, absolutely. We negotiated terms, and First Exposure was born in 2012. And that is now the de facto standard for where designers can go and have playtests at Gen Con. This year we should have over 107 individual designers at First Exposure. We'll be running over 4,000 attendees at Gen Con through the doors. It's a simplified version of Metatopia in which players will buy $0 tickets to come into the hall and choose a game based on short blurbs about what they are, a funny card game or a historical game based on Columbus, whatever it might be. And then we shoo them off to their tables and they play test for 2 hours, and then we do the next round. We do 27 slots of that at Gen Con.
Oh, wow.
And we have a big staff that does that, and it's a lot of fun for everybody. And we've launched so many companies. We are so proud of the Double Exposure alumni who have gone on to not only sell their games to publishers, but in a lot of cases actually become publishers on their own.
Do you have any more open slots for games for Gen Con, or is your list kind of full?
No, we did not reach maximum capacity last year. We were even taking some people on site. We are no longer taking people on site, but we are allowing designers to sign up, I think, to 2 weeks before Gen Con.
Okay. And what is entailed in signing up to be a designer at Gen Con?
We actually have a whole tab to ourselves on the front of the Gen Con website. So all you have to do is look for First Exposure Playtest Hall. There's a policy in there. You can sign up for $300. You get 4 playtest slots and 2 GM badges.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I was talking to Avi a little bit about the program that you have set up where the heralds go to the individual finding local game stores or any other kind of events to teach games. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about that and how they can get involved with that if it's something they're
Sure,
interested
that's
in?
the final and most recent part of the double exposure saga. Since we took the Metatopia concept so far, and since First Exposure was ostensibly handling designers from all over the world, suddenly we found ourselves with contacts everywhere. And we had fingers in just about every part of the gaming industry, and we said, you know what? There's something we can do here. And I had just finished a consulting job that I was working with and didn't have any other full-time prospects for the time, and I said to myself, I'm going to make a go of this. And at Gen Con 2014, we put together a business plan and created Envoy, named, by the way, by Kurt Covert of Smirk and Dagger Games, who is, of course, one of our clients.
He was just in here for an interview.
And there you go. So Kurt actually named it Envoy, and we all planned it together, and by January 2015, we launched it. Envoy is a service whereby we consult for companies to build their street team of demoers. We based it on the Men in Black program and the Outrider program of old times from Games Workshop. Took all the best parts of it and put it together in a multi-company form. And the explosion of companies that we had in the first 6 months was just phenomenal. We didn't expect the overwhelming support that we had gotten. Within the first 6 months of the program being live, we had over 30 clients. We now have over 60 clients, including some of the biggest names in the industry like Bezier, Smirk and Dagger, R&R, Stronghold, Portal, USAopoly, list goes on and on. And we have over 1,000 heralds across the country. The heralds act as autonomous agents. Basically, they get free games for a promise to show them off at stores, at conventions, at meetup groups across the country, and they get credit and prestige for doing it and more freebies for doing it. And we do all of this legwork for all of the companies so that nobody has to reinvent the wheel. And we're adding more companies left and right. We're adding heralds left and right, and the whole thing can all be accessed from the same place, www.dexposure.com.
That's so clever. I never would have thought to put something like that together. Like with the resources you've already had to put such an amazing program that benefits the entire community, it's fantastic.
We really feel that we are benefiting a lot of people by the Envoy program because in addition to just doing the heralds, all the companies are benefiting from our marketing expertise, our promotion expertise, my editing expertise. I've edited now over a dozen rule books of new products in the last year. Ignacio over at Portal Games asked me to redo the entire Neuroshima Hex expansion library, and all the new games that are coming out. The companies in Envoy are giving me the rule books to look over, and I think I'm making a big difference in, polishing things up, making things consistent. But we're designing the promotions. We designed the big wheel that R&R used for Origins and Gen Con for over the last 2 years. We designed the temporary tattoos that Kurt used for Nevermore 2 years ago when he launched it. Was it last year? I don't even remember at this point. But we go over the marketing, and we've created a series of store splashes. We've actually coined a name in the industry now called The Splash, in which a new product will be shown in somewhere between 50 and 150 stores on one weekend and make a giant footprint in the social media network across the 50 states.
So clever. Do you have any plans to expand outside of the 50 states? Or?
It's tough, and the biggest reason it's tough is because of shipping costs.
Of course.
The whole of Envoy has to count for how you can get product to heralds and conventions for that matter, because we actually direct our companies towards play-to-win conventions. So while we do have, for example, 7 Canadian conventions we support, they all have US mailing addresses. Very tough to be doing the same thing with European countries or any place else in the world. But we're working on it. It's we are already starting to get help for Essen and the UK Games Expo, and so it's going to take a few years, but we are expanding beyond the US borders.
You obviously have a lot of experience in the board game industry. You've been here a very long time. You're a board game veteran. Where did you get the marketing experience and skill set from?
I worked at an advertising agency called DDB Needham back in the 80s, and while I wasn't directly responsible for marketing things, I learned from some of the best and brightest minds on Madison Avenue what marketing and advertising actually meant. I also worked at the American Booksellers Association and got a lot of expertise in how trade organizations should work and how retailers should operate. And in general, there's a lot of common sense involved in it, which, as we know, is not so common. But a lot of experience has taught me what's going to sell, what gets people's attention, and I make calls for a lot of our companies. No, that's not going to do so well. You might want to pass on that, or wow, that's great. I called Terraforming Mars, and Stephen and I are still struggling over who actually figured out that it was going to be a giant success that it was.
So the heralds that you have for the game stores, do they overlap into the volunteers that we see at the cons like this, or are they completely separate?
Well, first of all, we don't use the word volunteer. Just very carefully, just to let you know, because volunteer actually is a federal term for somebody volunteering for a nonprofit organization.
Okay.
But they are helpers, and they're of their own free will. So when they actually go someplace, they're doing it because they love doing it.
Okay.
The same heralds who are out at their meetup groups and at their conventions and wherever they might be are the same ones who say, yeah, I would like to be at Gen Con, and I'll get my exhibitor badge, which is definitely something that gets them in an hour early, and it's a big perk. And if they do enough shifts, they will get some free crash space at one of the rooms that's within 2 blocks of the convention center, which are golden rooms right now. Those rooms are being auctioned off on eBay.
Oh, I've seen those.
Yeah,
amazing
incredible.
What those go
So
for.
we do the best we can to take good care of them. But again, they're all doing things of their own free will. That's the formula for this whole thing.
Of course, but the helpers and the heralds, do they overlap sometimes? Like there's the same people?
Absolutely, and we help coordinate them for all of our companies, and we have championships at Gen Con that we're running for some of our companies, and we're running a giant area in the Hall D section, the board gaming section that they've laid out in the main Gen Con area, where 14 companies are sharing Herald help to run events that are on the Gen Con schedule.
Is it hard to become one of those helpers? Are there like specific number of spots that
not a specific number of spots, but yeah, there's a bit of a process. Every single herald who's in there has had a video interview with me.
Okay.
We talk about what their goals are, and some of them don't work out. Most of them do, some of them don't work out. But you have to at least show me an enthusiasm. All right, the bar isn't that high, but it's enthusiasm, and showing up for the interview is actually a big criteria. You'd be surprised how sometimes that just doesn't get met.
Is there anything else that you'd like to tell our viewers that we might not have thought to ask about?
No, actually, I think I get a pretty good
Fantastic.
sweep of what double exposure is about. I will say that my wife, Avonelle, who's the other half of double exposure, is working very hard to create equality in this industry for underprivileged people, women, minorities, and she has created an organization entirely on her own called the Cred Bureau, which she's now building to make sure that women designers and people who are less fortunate will have the same ability to reach an audience that most designers have without thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. Now, I was a little confused when I first joined the Cred Bureau.
Mm-hmm.
The name didn't make sense to me, and I was very confused. Would you be comfortable sharing the story about how that group got its name?
Sure. Avi got asked many times about things. Well, not asked. Let's say explained. She loved having men who were part of the industry come to her and explain to her, well, little lady, let me tell you about the time that TSR was its own company. When Avi would explain back to them, why, yes, I had to comfort some of their executives when they got fired. So the theory is that she's going to say, I've got my cred right here. And that was the birth of the Cred Bureau.
When I got told that story, it made so much more sense, and I thought it was so cool. Just such a great name. Where can people go to find out more about the work that Avi's doing?
You can reach her directly at Avonelle at Dexposure.com. The Cred Bureau is still being formed, so I don't want to give away any half-baked promises and what have you. So of course it's going to have its own website, its own Twitter feed, its own Facebook page, but Avi is still in the process of setting all of that stuff up. So I would say by the end of this year it'll be fully functional, but certainly reach out to Avi if you're interested. Avonelle, Avonelle at Dexposure.com.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us, Vinny. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you.